My name's Hannah MacLeod. I'm the Policy Officer at MigrationNT in the Department of Industry, Tourism and Trade for the Northern Territory Government. And this is Ronan, who works for the Chamber of Commerce and looks after the two programs that we're going to be talking to you about today. Mm-hmm. So we got a little presentation that we might just get started on and ask questions along the way in the chat box if you like, and I'll try to answer them as I go along, and if not, I'll answer them at the end.
Cool.
So welcome everybody. This presentation's specifically about the Pacific Labour Mobility Programs, of which there are two. We will at the end can address briefly anything else, but we want to stick to these two programs today. And if you have individual questions about individual visas, etc., I'll give you the MigrationNT details at the end for you to make direct contact with the team. So today we're just going to do an overview of the two programs and explain the differences, the criteria of them, how you become to use them, and what you need to do. So the seasonal worker program is a program that brings in workers for a maximum of 9 months. So these predominantly in the past, this program's been used for agriculture, for fruit pickers and the like, but it is open to accommodation as well, which we'll move on to. So it is a possibility if you only want somebody short term. We also have the Pacific Labour Scheme, which is for workers for a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 3 years. Both of these programs are open to the whole of the Northern Territory. So the two programs help Australian businesses find workers where no local workforce is available. They protect Australian jobs. There is criteria in that you need to make sure that no locals can fill those jobs before you fill them with a Pacific worker. They protect the Pacific worker as well. There's very tight regulations on making sure that they're paid the same amount as a local worker would be and get the same workplace conditions. They match the jobs needed with the workforce. They also help the economy of those local countries, those specific countries. So the workers here come for a number of years and send the money back to their home family and home community to help them there. The participating countries in a regular year would be these 10 on your screen. Obviously, at the moment, we're dealing with COVID. So depending on how that's going, depends on which countries we would look at. So at the moment, sort of PNG and Fiji, for example, have COVID outbreaks, which is stopping us from bringing workers in from those countries. But we can talk more about that later. So like I said before, the seasonal worker program is a short-term program for seasonal work, up to 9 months total in the agriculture or those limited jobs there in the accommodation sector. These are unskilled, low-skilled workers in the seasonal worker programs. You need to be 21 and older, and the countries are the ones that were on the screen earlier. The Pacific Labour Scheme is a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 3 years. This is for all sectors. However, it is still a low-skilled and a semi-skilled program. So we can talk more about that, but this is really your sort of your cooks, your cleaners, those sort of roles.
It is 1 to 3 years under the Pacific Labour Scheme. 1 is the minimum.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to be able to provide a minimum of 12 months' work, or the program's not right for you.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a minimum of 30 hours a week work as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there's an upper age limit for the Pacific Labour Scheme of 45 years. What happens when you engage in either of these programs, though, is we will make contact with the country. You'll get a whole range of resumes. You'll do online interviews with the people. You know, you're not just given anybody. You'll get to choose who you want from these countries and make sure that they suit your needs. In order to be eligible for these programs, you need to be Australian-based business operating in the Northern Territory. You need to have shown that the roles that you're looking to fill can't be filled with local workers. Obviously, you need to have an ABN or an ACN. And for the seasonal program, you need to have been operating for 5 years. And for the Pacific Labour Scheme, which is the 1 to 3 year program, it's 3 years of operation. Be complying with any immigration fair work requirements and have established employment workplace policies as well.
What are some examples of a business successfully being able to prove that they're in need of labour that can't be met by Australian workers?
So you need to advertise on Seek.com, for example. You also need to advertise on Job Active, which is the Australian government work advertisement
One
website.
government and one even can be your own website, as long as you're doing two.
Yeah.
And for up to 2 weeks.
It can be Facebook.
And then anybody that then applies for the job, you have to prove that, demonstrate why they're not right for your business before you can then move on to take that.
And that can simply be that they don't have the experience or don't have the skills. In the industries we're looking at, I mean, we've got track record that we are short of staff, but they just need that 2 week advertisement of that specific role.
It's a very simple process. There's never been any problems. As I say, it's just something we have to do. It's part of the process. But as I say, it's never stopped anybody from using the programs.
Okay.
And if you advertise and you get an Australian that wants the job, then it's easy as well. That's So in order to use either of these programs, you do need to be an improved employer for these programs. It is a bit of a detailed process. This process is run by the Commonwealth agencies, and they look through sort of your, just basically making sure that you're a good employer.
Looks like I might have 2 questions
how
up
do
in that top.
Sorry, we'll just quickly get to the questions.
Yep. Where are we? Disappeared. Okay, we'll keep going. We'll come back to those questions.
We'll come back to the questions in a minute. Once you do the process to become an improved employer, that lasts you forever though. So the process does take a while. I've said there a minimum of 12 weeks. We have tried to say to the Commonwealth, can you speed it up a bit? But it just is what it is. The other option, if you need workers short term really quickly, is you can go through a labour hire company. There are a couple in the Northern Territory that are approved employers for these schemes. Obviously, they charge a commission fee for you using them. And if you want more information about that, we can provide their details. What I will say is this, though, even if you do use the labour hire company in the short term, we still think it's worth you going through the process of becoming an improved employer. Like I said, you go through that process once and then you can use these programs forever. And we can just get that started. So then whenever you do want to use this program in the future, even if it's next year after, you're ready to go.
Yeah. And that's my role as well. As I say, I'm here to help you along the way and make it as seamless as possible for the employer. So I'm happy to work around your time, come to your business, help with the visas, the process, the paperwork, anything that you think you need help with. I'm here to help you, as I say, to make it as seamless as possible and to become approved as an approved employer.
And in that 12 weeks, is you mentioned largely at the federal government level,
Yes.
and that's the background
visas, background checks, financials. We have to make sure that when the people come here for up to 3 years, they're going to have work for 3 years. And as I say, that's just they're very strict on the process at the moment because they've got too much to lose if it doesn't work out further down the line.
Yeah, so these two programs are exclusively federal government programs. We're here to assist Northern Territory businesses to use these programs, but all of the processing, approvals, everything gets done at the federal government level.
Right.
Yeah. Do we want to stop sharing, go to the questions,
Sure.
and then maybe come back?
Okay. Katie Jackson has a question. With the labour market testing, what happens if you're continuously able to fill roles, but workers only last for a short time, from 2 days to 2 weeks?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that would be, if you could show that,
They're not right for the job.
That's as good as saying the jobs can't be filled. If you can say, well, look, we keep on filling them, but they only last short term, they can't be filled in the long-term basis, that's fine. That will meet the labour market testing criteria.
As well, yeah. And in regards to the advertisement that we put up for the people to apply, we can really be look at sort of attracting the people with stricter questions and what you really want from that. And then, as I say, we can find that at the other end. If you can't find them here, then that's something we can move forward with.
Really? Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Okay, responsibilities of an approved employer. So obviously this is just general information and things are a little bit different in the COVID period as well. So you would need to pay for the worker to arrive in Australia. Having said that, there is a system in place where then you take a small portion of the workers' pay to recoup that cost of the flight. So that's something that we can work out as well. There's a maximum. Normally, you would be able to just arrange that they get on a plane and fly in. Obviously, at the moment, because of COVID, they will have to. We're looking at organising a chartered plane to bring them in and quarantine as well. So, and there may be some government assistance that can help with that as well.
It's a very different situation.
It's very different. When they arrive, Ronan helps you as well with this stage. You give an arrivals briefing. We want to make sure these workers are, going to do well in Australia. So we help them set up bank accounts, have a super, have a tax file number, all those things they need to work in Australia. Health insurance, checking their well-being, and like we said before, providing a minimum of 30 hours work per week. In terms of the arrange accommodation, that's basically, again, just helping them finding a place to rent. Again, they pay that money for their own accommodation. Things are a bit tricky in the rental market in Darwin in particular at the moment. We're here to help with that as well, with finding them a place to stay. It just needs to be a safe, adequate place. It doesn't need to be overly fancy, I would say. But like we said, we're happy to help with that as well. Yeah, it hasn't so far been an issue for us, that element of it.
Ronan, you've got room at your place.
Yes,
the support provided to approved employers. So the seasonal program is administered by the Federal Department of Education, Skills and Employment. They contract the Salvation Army to help with the work. So they actually have like a welfare team that work to make sure these workers are engaged with their church group, their sporting group, their multicultural group. Again, we want these workers to be happy and healthy and fit into the community, especially if they're going to be here for a number of years. So we get support, the federal agencies support with that. There's also a 24/7 hotline, both for the workers and for the employers as well. So what we've found in the past is that sometimes the workers aren't really comfortable with asking a question of their boss. So they can call this hotline confidentially, have a chat with her, and we just want to make sure that they're okay and happy, and that way you get the best out of them at work as well. So
culturally, they're very quiet as well a lot of the times and keep things to themselves. Where if there's a hotline, they're more than happy to go and speak to somebody else.
And then obviously Desi will feed the information back and we can solve whatever the issue is. For the Pacific Labour Scheme, obviously this is a scheme where they're here for 1 to 3 years. So there's a lot of support. They're here for a lot longer. So they help with providing the briefings as well and the accommodation, all those sort of things. The transportation options, that can be, it's not like giving every worker a car or anything. It's just making sure they know they can how to catch the bus and those sort of things. Make sure that they're not just stuck at work 24 hours, that they can get out, go shopping, all those kind of things. Things like Ronan helps with this as well, making sure they've got a mobile phone and things like that. Yeah. And again, with this scheme, there's also the 24-hour hotline for those workers as well.
And are they allowed to return to their home countries for, say on a break?
So when the workers arrive in Australia, they need to stay for the minimum period. So for the seasonal worker, I don't know what the minimum.
3 months.
3 months to 9 months. And then for this one, it's 1 year to 3 years. They then go back to their home country for a minimum time between 3 to 5 months. And then they can come back and do another stint as well. So
it's very expensive too to return home. So if they were to hear, as I say, they normally try and for the seasonal worker program, things are different. Now, a lot of them have stayed for up to 18 months because of the pandemic visa and what else. But normally for the Pacific Labour Scheme, it's still a pretty new program. So everybody will just be returning home now. It only started in 2018. So we haven't really had that sort of experience of people returning and going back. But 3 years, they want to stay, keep focused, make work, build a house, buy a car, do things like that. So that's why when they come here, they're just dedicated to their work.
Yeah. We've got, the federal government and us, we have connections with these countries that we're using as well. And they seem, the workers know what they're here for and they're here to work. So, yeah. And we also provide support to you. So, like we said, we'll help you to become an approved employer, help you with the recruitment plan, which is what you need to do, the paperwork you need to do to bring the workers in. And the travel and quarantine at this stage also is getting heavily coordinated by us due to COVID. So
that quarantining, and we'll go to one of those questions.
Yeah, so we'll get to the question.
Hilton. Yeah. Pacific Labour Agreement have direct entry into the NT, or do they need via another state still?
So at the moment, like I said before, we're looking at arranging a charter plane. So we're working out the logistics of that. It's looking like the quarantine site at this stage will be the quarantine centre in Alice Springs, as Howard Springs is now exclusively being used for repatriated Australians. So we'll organise a flight to come into Australia. It might have to make a stop somewhere else to go through visas support. We're working on that at the moment, but it will end up in Alice Springs for the workers to quarantine there for 2 weeks. Like I said, we're also working on government support for the flight and for the quarantine costs, but you need to be aware that when these workers get out of quarantine, they will be in Alice Springs. So depending on where the workers need to go to, they'll need to get there somehow. So whether that's on a plane or a bus or, without knowing where they're needed, it's a bit hard to say. The agriculture workers are predominantly needed in the Katherine region. So I know that they're coordinating buses from Alice Springs up to Katherine. So it depends. The majority of hospitality workers that we've identified are needed in Alice Springs. So for them, transport's not an issue. But yeah, we're happy to chat, to individuals depending on where you need your workers.
So one of Talos has put in here that they'd like to sponsor an employee from Fiji. You mentioned Fiji is one of those areas that's currently not open. How do they think about that, and what what challenges have they got if it's particular nation?
Yeah. So with Fiji, it's very disappointing. We are big supporters of using workers from Fiji, and we have done in the past. I know that yesterday, I think they had another 46 cases of COVID. The federal government actually are not allowing them into Australia. That's the Australian High Commission have stopped all flights from Fiji at the moment. We are still working with the Commonwealth to see if it's an option to bring in Fiji, because they are our preferred country as well. So we're speaking to our Commonwealth counterparts on their end. On our end, it would also take the Northern Territory Chief Health Officer to approve these workers coming in from Fiji. I would say if you want them within the next few months, I would just say it's very unlikely that we'll be able to get them in from Fiji, just realistically speaking. But as soon as it's safe to bring in workers from Fiji, we'll be looking to do that. So it depends where your workplace needs are.
Yeah.
Having said that, I know Hilton Group have a connection with Fiji, but there's a number of other countries that have very highly skilled hospitality workers as well that are as an option.
And under the scope, we talk about accommodation here, and Hilton, Marcus, in fact, has asked a question: can we bring people in for any position in the hotel, including finance, or is it only hospitality jobs? So and I imagine in the hotel there's a lot of cross work, and I know that happens regionally.
So the seasonal program is unskilled and low skilled jobs, and the Pacific Labour Scheme, the 1 to 3 year program, are low skilled and semi-skilled. I would classify finance as a skilled role, and so this program wouldn't be appropriate for a finance worker. Having said that, there are other migration programs available for those workers if you want to get in touch with us.
Okay, and that's the best way to find out about other migration programs.
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll certainly be sharing your details to everyone else on this chat later on, and probably put in a newsletter. Do we have a timescale as to when seasonal workers will be able to commence in roles?
Yeah, so and that's from the Hilton as well, who are an approved employer. So we're looking to get it in a plane very soon, as soon as we can. So if anybody is interested in using this program, we want you to get in touch with us almost immediately so we can coordinate this plane coming in. So the Commonwealth have agreed to fast track our paperwork. So really it's going to be very quick.
We just need sort of confirmed numbers so we can move forward. That's the
so without knowing a lot of detail as to where you're up to in this, so it's a matter of weeks, not months. And it's really, I would understand you're looking for a critical mass, a minimum numbers to make it work.
Yes, it's a flight. As I say, if we can't build the planes, then
it makes it very expensive.
A no-go.
Yeah.
Okay.
The short-term strategies being worked on to increase the workforce temporarily. These are these programs, I guess, would be the ones that can bring in workers in the immediate term. Obviously, we also have our other existing programs. On top of that, through the department as a whole, there was a $2 million critical support package in the latest budget, and that included the work, stay, play, to give incentives to bring workers from interstate, more advertisement of those roles as well. So that's more broadly in the department. For migration, we're focusing on these two programs to bring in workers as soon as we can.
Okay, great. Now's the opportunity, if anyone's thought of any questions, just to pop them onto the chat there. So Hannah and Ronan can have.
And again, I'm happy to come and visit anybody individually to your workplace. Just let me know. My details are there. If you want to contact me directly, I'm happy to come out and see you on a one-to-one basis and answer any more questions you have.
I'll call them.
Yeah. Okay. In lieu of no questions popping up on the screen, Hannah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good, comprehensive. I think everyone can feel there's a sense of urgency here. If you are thinking about that, now's the time. There might not be another window of opportunity coming up.
Yeah.
Ronan, great that you could make it today as well. Thank you, and your support, and as always the support of the chamber.
Yeah.
in working across all industry sectors in the Territory. So if there's anything further you might like to add, we might
No, that's okay.
call it up
Thanks.
there. And
Thanks everybody for
Yeah,
joining.
thanks for giving us the opportunity, Glenn. Cheers. Good job.
thank you, everybody.